I could flee very high.
It's a new day on the Enterprise and Hoshi is talking to a slug. Well, making noise at it anyway, as it's not intelligent, but she's trying to offer comfort as she feels responsible for it being unwell. She brought it back from an away mission and it's struggling to survive in our environment. Phlox promises to either do what he can or feed it to another animal, which is at least pragmatic, I suppose. Problems are today's theme, it seems. Archer's trying to find a squeak in his ready room while bemoaning that we've not met any proper aliens yet. Hoshi wants to swap quarters because she's on the wrong side of the ship, so the stars are going the opposite way to her preference. And, rather more importantly, Reed is struggling to calibrate our fireworks. That last problem gives us an excuse to kaboom something for real, so, as we're Starfleet, that's exactly what we're doing. A couple of real fireworks miss as well, just as the simulations did, but with the added bonus that one of them deflects and heads back towards us. At least the self-destruct works properly. Reed can do a science to try and fix the targeting, but it'll take a while, so Archer has us continue exploring. It feels like Dr. Phlox is the only one enjoying the trip so far. He agreed to come along partly to observe humans, and he's having a grand old time. In fact, he wants to ask 2 members of our crew if he can watch them copulate, for science. Bugger all of that, though, as the plots decided to finally turn up. We spotted something interesting ahead of us, so we go to give it a poke. The something is a stationary ship, and it's not answering our hails. It also looks like it's powered down, though that's possibly connected to some marks that could be weapons damage. Sounds like a mystery, and Archer's not going to pass up the chance to investigate, no matter how much T'Pol suggests we should exercise discretion by buggering off. Hoshi seems to be leaning towards the use of caution, which makes it a touch awkward when she's told by Archer that she'll be part of the away team. Archer's preparing for the trip and feeding cheese to Porthos, dog in space, when Hoshi comes to see him. Her attempts to convince him she isn't needed on the mission fall flat. Having a translator on the Enterprise is bugger all use if they have a problem with the phones, so she's coming, despite spacesuits giving her claustrophobia. I doubt learning that Reed thinks we should take rifles with us helps her confidence, even though Archer overrules him, and neither does being given a pistol she's not used before. Over we pop, and after some fiddling with the hatch, we climb inside. Hoshi immediately proves her worth by pointing out a ladder means the owners are probably bipeds. Not that she's likely to get much chance to talk to them based on the many scorch marks inside the ship, or the biological goo on the walls that could be blood. We continue exploring and find some equipment that looks out of place, not least of which because it's still working. We also find a dozen or so aliens hanging from the roof with tubes connecting them to the gizmo, a discovery that almost has Hoshi Scarpa in panic until Archer tells her to stay put. The aliens are of the distinctly dead variety, says Reed, and the pipes are draining a fluid from them. This is enough for even Archer to decide it's time to sod off. Phlox clears them of any bacteria, so we don't need to use the Berman chamber, and T'Pol is told about what we found. She thinks the scarpering should now include the rest of us and the ship, an idea that doesn't sit right with Archer. He thinks there's more going on here, but as there's nobody to save and only danger for ourselves, he reluctantly orders us to leave. Hoshi chooses to spend some of the travel time talking to Phlox. His efforts to convince her the reaction was normal fall on deaf ears, as the other 2 manage to handle it just fine instead of wailing like a glam metal tribute band. The problem, she says, is that she joined our crew to meet new aliens and learn their languages. Her expectations did not include ceiling-strung corpses being juiced. Phlox wonders if she might be happier going back to teaching, but she's not sure. She worked hard for this and genuinely wants to visit new cultures. She can also understand why Archer needs someone with her skills. It's just that she's not sure she's able to adapt to the changes any more than the space slug she grabbed. Archer's struggling a little as well. He's dining with Tucker and T'Pol again, and the whole business with that ship isn't sitting right with him. T'Pol tries to distract him with the prospect of some interesting science bollocks further up ahead, but that just pisses him off more. Leaving them there without even trying to let their species know is playing on his conscience, regardless of whether whoever put them there is likely to come back. T'Pol disagrees with interfering, and Tucker's non-committal, but Archer's starting to realize he's not angry at them. He's angry at himself for agreeing to leave. We've reversed course and are heading back to the ship, though Archer wants to switch up the away team this time. Phlox will be coming along to see if he can identify both the species and what purpose the gizmo has, and Tucker will be fiddling with their phones to try and work out how we call their mates. Unfortunately, that'll mean taking Hoshi again to decipher their language and write the message. She tries to object and is overruled by Archer, but he has the decency to apologize for it being necessary. Reed wants to come along too and bring guns, though Archer decides the smart choice is to stay on the Enterprise and continue fixing our fireworks. If whoever did this comes back, we need to be ready. Once over there, Phlox is able to determine the crew died in a variety of ways, some of them violently. He's going to perform an autopsy to learn more, which might be difficult when we previously established the ship's internal temperature was minus 20 degrees, but maybe the aliens have fluids with low freezing points based on the business with the pipes and pump. As Tucker manages to power up the computer and Hoshi uses a voice recording from the aliens to start a translation vocabulary, Phlox is completing his autopsy. The pipes are hooked up to glands in the corpses, the purpose of which is to extract an enzyme, maybe for medicine, maybe as an aphrodisiac, and maybe they're just doing it for shits and giggles. Either way, the corpses are being farmed. Hoshi's not doing too well. She wants to finish up and get gone, and she's also decided she's made a mistake by taking this job. Hoshi's discovered there's a difference between curious and adventurous, and the latter requirement is something she's simply not cut out for. Tucker's efforts at persuading her to give it more time are rebuffed, then they drop the topic as the translator has found a match for the words she needs. She cobbles together a possible distress call, and Tucker sends it out. The good news is a ship arrives shortly afterwards. The bad news is the tech on it matches the pump, meaning it's probably the buggers who did this. As Archer and company scarper back to the Enterprise, Reed's telling T'Pol our fireworks still aren't ready. We can manually fire them, but we probably won't hit anything that isn't sitting still. Archer's docking just as the ship, which has ignored our hails, starts pooping green at us. Impacts knock the shuttle off its docking arm, but we're successful on the second attempt. Archer orders us to scarper, only to be told that's not going to happen, as they've buggered one of our warp engines. That doesn't leave us with many options, so we try farting some fireworks. Despite the technical problems, our first shot actually hits. It also bounces off their shield before detonating and does bugger all. The second firework is shot down before it even reaches them. The ship scans us, likely to see if we're suitable for the same treatment as the corpses we found. We're about to prepare for boarders when another ship turns up. This one gives us a call, and the species matches those of the corpses we found. Archer asks Hoshi to translate a message, though the system isn't exactly perfect yet, and the new ship now seems to think we're responsible for the corpses. As the first ship to arrive prepares to drill through our hull, Hoshi's becoming more and more flustered with the translator. Archer tells her to ignore it and try talking to them herself, as by this point she can't make it much worse. Perhaps realizing the alternative is having her corpse milked, she gives it a go. A bit of back and forth results in the new ship pooping some orange at the other one, which stops trying to drill through our hull so we can move away. Reed says he's now got our weapons working properly too, so we fart another firework at it and score a hit, before the new ship shows us how it's done and finishes the job. We've exchanged pleasantries with our new friends, a species called the Axonar. After helping them with the derelict, Hoshi wants Archer to nip to a nearby planet. It's not quite what Space Slug is used to, but Hoshi thinks they'll adapt, so we'll leave our kidnapped mollusk to make a new home and possibly bugger up the biodiversity of an entire sodding planet as we get ready to take another step on the long road. A new show means a new crew, and a new crew means some episodes to help we viewers learn who they are now we've started the season proper. Hoshi gets to be the first, or arguably the second if you want to include Archer getting a chunk of daddy-based characterization in the opening story. Either way, we're taking a closer look at our linguistics expert today. To be fair, it's a pretty good choice. Trek to this point has largely been about heroic heroes heroing stuff, so throwing in a member of Starfleet who's not really on board for the whole adventure business gives us a neat way of establishing that Enterprise is not quite like what came before. The tech is rougher, procedures are unpolished if they exist at all, and our crew lacks experience. Hoshi's the personification of this latter point, the fantasy of expectation being given a good kicking by the reality of exploration. Her reactions on the ship are perfectly normal, perfectly natural, and perfectly display just how fucking unhinged the average Starfleet officer is. Room full of dead people getting juiced? Yeah, I suppose that is kinda weird. Anywho, let's take a look-see at these computers. No wonder the rest of the planet sent them into space. They're a sodding liability. What's useful for establishing the universe is useful for establishing Hoshi as well. I've said before that a character brought low is a good way to make them seem more real, with my usual example being a Deep Space Nine episode called The Quickening, where Julian Bashir's cocky arrogance is humbled by a disease. A similar principle applies here, though slightly less effective, in my opinion. Underdog tales are far more common, and that's what this essentially boils down to. She has the skills and ability, but lacks either the confidence or Starfleet's blasé approach to danger, depending on which way you look at it. A setback raises the volume of her imposter syndrome to the point of quitting, only for her to subsequently defeat a larger challenge and gain more than she lost. She's no longer entirely green, a threat experienced and survived now. The whole thing gives her the knowledge to make an informed decision on her own abilities and motivations. Her choice is that, if it means she gets to do what she loves, maybe she can come to terms with a universe that's not always kind and good. If we're looking for faults, we could point out the plot is kind of ludicrous. The idea of temporary meat farms on derelicts makes far less sense than just kidnapping the crew based purely on efficiency. But we're dealing with aliens, so there are countless different ways to headcanon that. Maybe they don't want to sully their ship with cattle. Maybe it was just for the giggles. Maybe they even believed they were being kind and good. It's not just language that can change between species. Hoshi may have gained the bravery to stick with the Enterprise, but that's not all we learned from this one. We have a line from T'Pol about Vulcans not sharing humanity's enthusiasm for exploration. To those who've seen other Trek shows or films, that feels rather off, doesn't it? Our first contact with the Vulcans was due to a nearby survey ship of theirs, and the quantity of Vulcans we see in Starfleet suggests it's not accurate, or at least will stop being accurate in the future. It also feels a touch counterintuitive for a culture that reveres the concept of idic, or infinite diversity in infinite combinations. Let's be generous, though, and give it some thought. Perhaps she's not saying they don't explore, but is simply making the distinction of not being enthusiastic about it, an example of their disdain for anything with emotional connotations. Or perhaps she's referring to exploration in the sense of following whims, like she mentions in the episode. It's possible Vulcans don't consider methodical surveying and documentation to be the same thing as flitting between interesting anomalies like moths to a flame. Perhaps it's even a nod to that very reverence for idic, and they consider exploration itself to be impactful upon diversity. Are they trying to minimize the observer effect, the principle that an object or system can be directly influenced and thus altered by any attempts to measure or quantify it? That would also tie into their preference for non-interference, a very hands-off approach being the least likely to cause ripples. Or maybe she's just talking out of her arse, deliberate bullshit to try and dissuade we pesky humans from exploring. I confess I've read there's a nod to this being the case in a later episode, but that could just be retconning. The more likely answer is that it was just meant to be a throwaway line and simply not given much consideration. That's not our way, though, so for as long as we're given things to think about, we'll continue to take ideas and see how many directions they'll run in. Just like Archer, it feels wrong to leave it alone. End of episode.
I'm not sure I'm a fan of this new ship, you know.
It's certainly a bit grey, isn't it?
They've not even got carpets. That's just shoddy, that is.
No replicators either. We can't just call food up on command.
Christ, it's like the Dark Ages. What do we do instead?
Not a clue. As I'm sure you remember, my library of historical data was corrupted during my teleporter accident.
Yeah, it got turned into some books up your ass.
Sigh, yes, it got turned into some books up my arse. Anywho, that means I'm not familiar with this time period, especially when it's useful for plot purposes.
Handy, that. Well, I suppose we'd best ask then. Computer?
Yes?
Not you.
Oh.
Computer.
Oh crap.
What is it now?
It's the low-tech past future.
And?
And that means there are no voice commands.
None at all.
Well, except for recording personal logs, but I'm sure that doesn't raise any questions about why they'd implement a complicated system for one of the least important tasks on the ship and have everything else manually operated. Either way, we can't control anything else by voice command.
No, not again, Woof.